it is so good to see you, number one. Number two, you're in the place where your big New York thing started, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I came to New York City, I was 24, 25 years old, and I had started in my hometown of Sacramento, and I'd only been there for like 2 years.
You were a kid.
I was just 23 when I started at KCRA-TV, an NBC affiliate in my hometown, and I was hired as a weather girl. That was back in the day that they actually called us weather girls.
Weather girls, yeah, they don't do that anymore.
And then they had me be a consumer reporter for a little bit, and then boom, I became an anchor because there weren't women working in news at that time. So you could make an ascension like that, like overnight. But it means that when they hired me in New York to be a street reporter, I'd never actually been a street reporter before, but
I won't tell anybody.
I accepted the job, and I figured I'll figure it out when I get there. And I
Yeah.
kind of learned from all my camera crews.
And you learned as the job went on, right?
Oh,
yes.
on the street, yeah. On the job training, yes.
The biggest news operation in the country.
Yeah.
And you didn't know what you were doing there.
Yeah, but if somebody asks, if you want a page out of the Joan Lunden playbook, it is this. Whenever anyone asks you if you can do something, just say yes, and then go figure out how to do it.
There you go.
And that's, people say to me, oh my God, you've done so many extraordinary things. You had this life. I mean, I said, yeah, that's because every time an opportunity came along, I always said yes. And so I was a little bit naive about thinking you could just drop me onto the streets of New York and instantly be a street reporter. I remember I went to my first story, Bill. It was a fire in a big apartment building, and we pulled up in front, and I got out of the car. The guys were all getting their equipment out of the trunk, and I started trying to talk to a fireman. And he looked at me like I was his little sister nagging him. And the the cameraman came running over and said, "You can't talk to firemen. You have to talk to the man with the white helmet." I was like, okay.
But you learn by doing.
I learned by doing.
And isn't that what everyone does at some point? Not so much anymore. You can't get a job
Maybe
here
not
like
so
that.
much live on television,
Right.
but
Right, but you did it anyway. And
Yeah.
for some reason, you got it on your own, and you made it happen. And so I think that's what people remember about you. This book, I think to your avid fans, and you have a lot of them, and we want to have younger people hear you and
Yes.
say, hey, this is the woman I don't know, but my mom does, and my dad does. It would not surprise them, the ones you know, that this was like your 11th book, 12th book?
yeah, my 11th book,
Right.
but certainly the most important one because it's my legacy, my life story. It was the hardest one to do by far.
How come?
How do you get a life like mine into 100 pages? And by the way, I didn't make it in 100 pages. It's
No, I
longer.
can see that. Yeah, there's several
All right,
hundred.
into
There's almost
100,000
400 here.
words.
So you didn't make that.
But it's hard, and I'm going to tell you something. I wrote the book. I started it like 11 years ago, and I finally wrote the book and turned it in, and my publisher said, this is an autobiography, which is basically a compilation of all the things you've done in your life. It's like Joan Lunden reporting on Joan Lunden's life. Your readers want a memoir. They want you to take them into every moment. So she teamed me with a memoirist, and I love the way it turned out. It's because I'm a voracious reader and I like reading novels, like historical novels, and so it reads a little bit more like a novel, even though it is my life story, but I just took you in all the moments of my life.
You have two big different groups of people who are going to hear this and watch this and then read this. The people who are baby boomers, you don't have to say who's Joan Lunden. Everyone knows who Joan Lunden was. But their children and their grandchildren are going to say, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Granddad, who is this person?
Oh, I know. I meet young people today. They don't have a clue as to who I am. I hope that a lot of people will buy this book for their young daughters, for their 20s, even their teens and their 20-somethings and their 30-somethings. Because I don't know if young women today realize that it wasn't that long ago. I mean, like, here I am. It was when I was in my 20s. How different life was. The fact that this industry was an all-male industry, and that I kind of pushed the door open a little bit and got my foot in. And then when I went to Good Morning America, and when I got the call from my agent that I had gotten the job co-hosting GMA, I was a reporter at Eyewitness News. I was trying to get my story ready on my typewriter.
I remember those.
Remember those?
Yes.
And he said, I just got the call from ABC. They've offered you the job as co-host of GMA. And 20 minutes later, my gynecologist called me and said, congratulations, you're pregnant with your baby, my first child. 20 minutes. And I mean, my first thought was, are they going to take it back? And I called my attorney, and he said, well, lucky for you, it's 1979, and there was just a federal law passed that no company can discriminate for pregnancy, so they can't take it back. But I still wondered, how am I going to be able to do it? But it never occurred to me to say, oh man, bad timing, it would have been great.
Yes.
I just figured all right, so I got to figure out how I'm going to do this.
And when you took the job, you were how old?
GMA?
Yeah.
I was 20, well, when I became the co-host,
Yes.
I was 29.
29, so that was in 1979.
79.
I started there the end of 1992 because we started Sunday GMA. By that time, you were a superstar, right? It was 12 years later.
But when I started at GMA, I remember, that was back in the day that you couldn't say breastfeeding on television. It was one of those taboo words that you're not allowed to say on TV. So I had to call my agent and say, would you please call ABC and ask them if I can bring my baby with me because I'm breastfeeding? And he was silent, what? And I said, hey, no harm in asking. And I guess they just wanted my tush in that seat before the big fall season started so bad that they said yes. Quite honestly, Bill, I don't think that they understood completely what they were saying yes to. They had no idea. They thought that we were going to keep it as the best kept secret ever.
Can you imagine? I mean, no one would ever say that these days, right?
But that's what was expected at the time. And so my first day on the job, they had this big press conference, and they took me aside and said, don't say anything about the fact you have a baby upstairs. These are television critics and television writers. They're going to chew you up and spit you out. They'll never think you can do your job. I said, well, I wasn't really planning on bringing it up. And yet the first question came from Time magazine. We hear you're bringing your baby to work. How did you work that out with ABC?
Sacrilege, really, right?
First question. And we wondered how we got such a packed house because that was the breaking story of the day, not who was going to be the next GMA co-host. It was the fact that a major media corporation was allowing a woman to bring a baby to work with her.
And for that, you broke the mold. And for baby boomers, especially women, you broke the mold. And that was the key to all this. It started.
Yeah. And I was not some flag-waving feminist at all. I mean, quite the contrary. I was just this little newbie reporter who was about to get this big job, and I wanted, to do it right. And they said yes, so I went in. I wasn't sure how my colleagues would take it. But I got to tell you, I think they saw me show up, be prepared, do the interviews, even though they knew good and well I was dealing with spit up and dirty diapers. And that, I think, endeared me to them, and I think it endeared me to the audience. Our ratings soared.
You had it in your contract to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I got in my contract, before I ever sat down in the chair. They said I could bring my baby to work as long as I was breastfeeding. And that second question after Time magazine was Newsweek. And they said, but this show travels, what will you do with the baby? And I said, well, contractually, ABC gave me the right to take the baby with me anywhere I go in the world. And by the way, my little baby Jamie, she went with me to cover the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana, and she was, I guess, just turning 1 year old.
Can you imagine? You were tough to do this, but you set the stage for other women, and you became, huge because of that. You know, the office buildings that have been created at this new place now, that's not a big deal. I mean, no one ever talks about this anymore because they have places for women who are doing what you did back then in secret, and it's quite public now.
Well, I was asked by a lot of viewers back then, this is great that you got this, but how can we get this for other women? And a few years later, they were building a big new ABC building. And they put out a survey. I don't know if you remember this, but what would you rather have was the question. A parking garage, B, a gym, and C, daycare.
Let me see.
What do you think you want?
It wasn't for kids.
It was definitely not daycare. I lost that one.
Yeah, for cars.
It was cars.
Yes, of course. It's not a hard thing to think of.
Yeah.
But you know what? Now they do. And now it's because of that. And I'm wondering what now, if we sort of sneak this into this conversation, the young people who maybe didn't ever know who you were, but now they do, and they're saying, oh my God, she was famous, and she did it for a good cause. And Mom, was that me? That you were doing that too? What does it mean? What would you tell them? What can they do about business now? Because it's not the same business. Yes, they bring women in who are lactating, whatever. There's a place to go for that. But it's a very different experience for young women. And what's your advice?
Well, there was no precedent back then. It was almost considered a little bizarre. It was actually considered very bizarre. I mean, my assistant, she'd say, the woman is here from Ladies Home Journal to interview you. And she would take Jamie out of her crib that was in my office and go walk her around the office while I did an interview. But I still think women still have it a lot tougher today. I'm just going to go there because women are still the ones that are primarily in charge of their household, primarily in charge of doing the shopping and the cooking, for the most part. And I don't mean to say this because, you're probably an involved dad, but men do though. They're able to wake up and say, am I going to wear the gray suit or the blue suit? And they get dressed and they go to work. A woman wakes up and says, did I get the ice hockey stick? Oh no, did I get the ballet shoes? Wait, did I get a birthday party for the party, a birthday present for the party on Saturday? That's how our brains still think. And I think it's still that way for women pretty much everywhere.
So you think your advice to the younger women now, it still exists, that problem?
Yeah, someone just said to me, the only difference between Donna Reed and women today is that we still bake the cake, but we also have a full-time job.
I have a secret to tell you. Donna Reed, I don't think many people know who that is.
Okay, well.
She was a very famous TV
very
person.
famous TV mom who wore a dress and high heels as she cooked dinner.
There you go. So what advice would you give? What advice do you give to your kids about
So
this?
I still say to all young women that you have to prove yourself. I think we still have to prove ourselves. And how do you do that? Let me give you the advice Barbara Walters gave to me. I'd been on GMA like maybe just a few months, and I got to interview her, and I was so intimidated. And I did the interview. It was about one of her specials, and she took me aside afterwards during the commercial and said, I'm going to give you some advice. Don't fight for equality, because that time is not here yet. Not just for our industry, but in society. What you do is you take every small assignment that they will give you and make it shine, make it a gem, so that they can't help but notice you. That's how your star will rise. And that's what I followed. That was the advice I followed. And I got to tell you, that game plan worked. And I think it still works today. I tell you, look, when I went to work way back in 1973 at the local station, I was an intern. So why did my star rise? Because I was everywhere in that newsroom. Anybody that needed anything, they're like, let me go with you on the story. Let me show you, and let me find out. How do I edit film? Do you need some slides? Because remember, back then I had to find slides for cumulus clouds and cirrus clouds. There was nothing came from the internet. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have teleprompter. And I was trudging into a male's world. And I remember when I first started, because we didn't have teleprompter, you had your script in front of you and you always looked down. And I didn't know anything at that point about what's called chroma key, that they put a blue background and then they can run film, like if a weatherman is in front of it, they can make it look like he's out on a rainy day. But as a consumer reporter, they were running shots of tomatoes and lettuce or whatever. And every time I looked down, at home what they saw was tomatoes, lettuce, milk. And everybody upstairs in the newsroom were like practically wetting their pants. They thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And they said, don't tell her, because it's just too good. It's too funny. I mean, that was the kind of atmosphere that I was kind of putting one foot in front of the other.
So your takeaway to the younger audience now that is faced with difference than you had, but in some ways the same.
In some ways it's still the same. And you know, they want a big company wants to start you at a lower level, and there are reasons for it. You kind of learn the machinations. You learn who's, you know, maybe you're in the mailroom, answering phones. You learn who's calling, what are their complaints. There's reasons for starting us at the bottom. And yet there's a tendency today for young people to want to like start at the top because they're so used to instant gratification. And there's a reason why we don't start at the top. You know, I mean, I don't think I ever would have been able to do the job I did at Good Morning America if I hadn't been a reporter for 7 years at that point.
It's interesting. It's just fascinating.
And especially for me, Bill, because I came from Sacramento, California, which was a very, I don't know, homogenized local town. And then here I am in New York City.
Very different.
Oh, different. And it was hard. And there were times when I thought, you know, why don't I give up my cushy anchor job? And I'm here like, you know, my clothes smell like smoke because I'm at fires. And I realized something. I needed to see all those layers of social unease, of, you know, I needed to be outside of my comfort zone and in the trenches. If I was ever going to be able to sit in any chair at a national level and have the amount of empathy and the amount of like layers of knowledge about what people go through.
You came to New York.
And there's nowhere like the streets of New York to get that.
Exactly, no question about it. And
Yeah.
it gave you a good guidance for what was going to become Good Morning America for you.
Absolutely. And Good Morning America went on the air in 1975. And that was right when I came to New York. And they were just making the change. And David Hartman was starting there. And the producer, I remember one day he called and he said, would you come and see me? I want to talk to you about doing some things for Good Morning America. I was like, yeah. And I went to him and he said, we're putting a family together. And that was one of the things that made Good Morning America so successful.
And for everyone who came forward.
We weren't a blue screen with a big globe with anonymous faces from the field. We had a home. Our set was like a home, like anywhere, anybody's home in America. We called our experts family members. And that's how I started there. And I remember I said to Woody Frazier, who was the executive producer, as I walked out, I said, by the way, like, how did you come to call me? He said, I see you every night on the news. I was like, oh yeah. I mean, that was back kind of like the naivete back in those days.
We've asked about your position on younger people. What about people our age? All right, we're just about the same age, a few months apart. We're still working.
We are not anything like our parents were, at this age. It's like just a whole new world. I can't even imagine retiring. And, you know, it's so funny because people think I'm retired after GMA. They'll see me out on the street and say, oh, how are you enjoying retirement? My husband will say, just say fine. Just say it's great. Do not try to tell him everything you're doing. But when you're on a platform like Good Morning America, you have so many opportunities that come to you. I didn't do what everyone expected. I didn't like jump over to the Today Show or go on to a talk show. I had those opportunities and didn't lean in. I was exhausted at the time. I had met a man that I knew I would want to marry. I wanted some normalcy in my life. But I think I always, for a long time, thought that maybe I didn't live up to what everybody thought I should do. But now that I'm at this point in my life, Bill, where I can look at the whole arc and say, okay, this is 25 years of amazing national recognition, this big job. Here's the 25 years since. I've had such a 25-year, first of all, I've done 10 other shows since then, but they weren't on every day in the morning, so people don't know about them. But the advocacy work that I became involved in the last 25 years, you know, going before Congress and testifying to increase the Family and Medical Leave Act, to include caregiving besides just birth, testifying before the FDA to get mandatory mammogram reporting. Like, if any of those just singly was on my tombstone, what I did for breast cancer, I would be happy. Just as happy as I would be for saying that she broke a lot of barriers and paved the way for women in broadcasting. Those are just as meaningful. But I think it took me until now to be able to write this book for even me to understand that that next 25 years with an incredible family life and kids and a loving husband and all this advocacy work. You know, when I left GMA, some little whippersnapper said to me, "How are you ever going to top this job, Joan?" And it was one of those like nasty but obviously appropriate questions. And it always like stuck in the back of my head. And I think I always wondered, did I like not do that? And it took me a long time to realize you don't have to top what you did before. You don't have to do the same thing. Be open to other opportunities. Expand how you can make your mark on this earth. But I don't think I could have done that even 5 years ago or 10 years. It took till now to be able to really dig deep enough and write this book.
Because it's your legacy in some ways,
Yeah.
in so many ways. But you're still doing different things and still working.
Yes.
You know, very hard. I want to ask you one question about your book, because I'll tell you what got me. Joan, live behind the script, the part where you wrote about your father. And it really did affect me, and it affected me for several reasons. Your dad was a noted doctor in California, disappeared in 1964 on a small plane trip in Southern California.
Yeah, crashed in Malibu Canyon. He was only 51.
And it was how long before you actually found his body?
Oh no, they couldn't go out right away because it was a storm that he crashed in, and then they found the wreckage in Malibu Canyon.
So they didn't know. You didn't know.
Yeah.
And I couldn't help but think about Savannah Guthrie.
Oh
and
my
her
gosh,
family.
I know.
And
the not knowing is,
Right. And I couldn't help but think you were going through that very same thing. What did you think after you wrote this thing when you saw that story?
Oh my gosh, I mean.
Here's a woman who was on a national show.
Absolutely the same thing. And, you know, whenever you're on a major broadcast like that, you also worry about how it will affect other family members. I always worried about how it would affect my children. I had my fair share of stalkers and horrible things. I still have that folder in my house that says, "If ever I'm not found, this is where you start." I still have it to this day. And we always worry about the impact because we sign up for this, but none of our family members sign up for it. And I used to always worry. I mean, I was even worried that my kids would grow up with a warped sense of reality because everybody stopped at our table and said hi and they were nice. Is my kid going to be not safe out in the world because of that kind of upbringing? And you can know from the book how close I was with my mom. She was my cheerleader, my supporter, and watching her model herself and the resilience that she found in the face of adversity when my dad was killed in our plane and had my brother and me, we were teenagers. That taught me how to face adversity and still have resilience, which is something that I needed all throughout my life. So, you know, those kind of stories, believe me, it's not just me, I'm sure, that as we watch the story with Savannah, that it kind of hits a note inside of us.
Any last words you want to put out there?
Yeah, we got to tell them about the QR codes.
The QR, okay,
because
good.
I was writing this book, and it occurred to me that most of my life since I was 23 is on videotape. And gee, wouldn't it be great if I could only figure out a way to share some of that video? And then I got the idea, how about a QR code? So I have QR codes all throughout the book. So as I tell a story, you read it, and then you can put your phone over the QR code, or if you're reading it on your laptop, you just click it, and it opens up to the actual story, the video footage. And so once again, breaking barriers.
There you go.
Yep, there you go, doing something else new.
I will say to you, I was there with you about 7 or 8 years together, and it was amazing. And you talk about the family that was Good Morning America. It's great now. It's really nice to see it. We watch it all the time. That time was a magical time, and we were taking it to a new place, and it was really wonderful.
I'll tell you how magical it was. The people who worked on this show from the late 70s and through the 80s were so tight, and we traveled the world together all the time. We still get together every single year.
You were there at the last one.
Every December, you see me there. Every year, we get together for a little, holiday party, and like 150 people show up. That was a huge staff of people that worked on that show. And everybody's somewhere else, everybody's working somewhere else, or they've retired, and we all get together and say, hey, you haven't changed.
It's true. And you know what? That's something everyone will remember. There's no question about it. Good luck. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Bill.
All right, good seeing you, too.